Now, Newcastle are in action tomorrow. They have an uphill task ahead of them if they're to progress to the knockout stage. Let's go live to Newcastle's training ground. We can speak to our reporter Keith Downey, who's been speaking to Eddie Howe today. Good evening, Keith. So what did Eddie Howe have to say?
Yeah, Mike, well, top of the agenda, of course, was the injury situation. I feel like I'm a bit of a broken record in terms of asking Eddie Howe questions about that. But for a number of weeks now, Newcastle have been down to the bare bones. They had 12 players out going into the weekend against Tottenham Hotspur, and then both Sean Longstaff and Callum Wilson returned in that 4-1 defeat, meaning that they're only missing 10. Now, I was up at the club's training ground earlier on this morning watching the open training session, which of course broadcasters are given the day before a Champions League match. I think it's indicative of the situation at the club that instead of actually training this morning, the players did a little walk around a couple of pitches, stretched off a few times and then got back in their cars and headed home. That is the situation at Newcastle at the moment. Newcastle have an unbelievably difficult schedule, and I think Eddie Howe knows that the last thing they need are any heavy training sessions. But the sort of negative thing as far as Newcastle United supporters are concerned is that when I was up there, I noticed that none of Martin Dubravka, Sean Longstaff or Anthony Gordon were present at that training session this morning. So at Eddie Howe's news conference in the last hour or so here at the stadium, I asked him if any of those players could potentially be involved against AC Milan tomorrow night, and this was Eddie Howe's response. A broken record asking you about injuries, but our cameras were at the training session this morning. Obviously, with just a one.
What did you see, Keith?
I saw some players walking around and then doing a few stretches. So it probably wasn't a training session, but there was no Anthony Gordon, no Martin Dubravka, and no Sean Longstaff. Should we read anything into that?
Yes and no. You can read whatever you want into it. Yeah, we're 2 days after a game, so. We're obviously trying to manage players, yeah, and we'll see who's fit for tomorrow. I've just given you nothing there, have I?
Giving you nothing, Keith. I need you to give me something. How did Newcastle make it through?
Yeah, Eddie Howe being as evasive as ever when it comes to injuries and team selection. He was actually, Mike asked the direct question later on whether Martin Dubravka will be fit enough to play, and he even answered that by saying it's unclear at the moment. So we're going to just have to wait until the team is announced about an hour and 15 minutes before kick-off tomorrow. But look, this has all the hallmarks of a massive match here at St James's Park. Of course, you'll be well aware they've not played in the Champions League for 20 years, and Newcastle know that if they beat AC Milan here tomorrow night and Paris Saint-Germain slip up at all away to Borussia Dortmund, Newcastle qualify for the knockout stages and will play Champions League football after Christmas, which will be some feat, Mike, given the injury crisis that they've had to face over the second part of the group phase. But they also know that if they get a point against AC Milan tomorrow, they remain in Europe, but they will drop down into the Europa League. However, if they lose here at St James's Park tomorrow night, they go out of Europe altogether. Eddie Howe has called on the Newcastle United supporters to get behind his side because their home form has been tremendous of late. The away form, as we've seen in the last week, at Goodison Park and then down at Tottenham on Sunday has not been good. So Eddie Howe calling on his supporters to get behind them because of the injury situation. They're down to the bare bones. They're going to need every single supporter backing the team. This is what he had to say on the home fans.
Going to need every voice. Every person can make a difference tomorrow. I think it's one of those nights for us. We need to create the atmosphere that has been befitting, really, of our home form. The supporters have never let us down at home. I think they've been incredible. They've really driven us on, especially when there's been some tight games, and we've been working as hard as we do in the matches. They've given us the ability to keep going, and we're going to need that tomorrow to make it a magical European night. And they can only do so much. We have to do our bit to make it that.
Yeah, so that was a message from Eddie Howe, as you heard there, Mike, asking the supporters to help the players make it a magical night here at St James's Park. As I say, Newcastle know that if they get anything from the group, anything from the match, should I say, they will remain in Europe beyond Christmas. But it doesn't help their schedule, does it? Because after this one, tomorrow night. They've got Fulham at home here on Saturday, which normally would be a match where they could maybe rest a few and, you know, get a few of the injured players back. But of course, we all know Fulham have won the last 2 matches 5-0, and then next Tuesday they go down to Chelsea to play in the Carabao Cup. So, look, games coming thick and fast for Newcastle. They don't have their injury problems to seek. But Eddie Howe, they are hoping that the fans will be the extra player tomorrow night here at St James's Park and give them a win to end what has been a really exciting Champions League campaign for them.
Keith Downey keeping an eye on Newcastle for us. Thank you, Keith.